lot of events happening. Peace, D. Lee Hines. Peace. Happy New Moon as well. And a lot of events taking place, a lot of flag raisings taking place, a lot of different things. A very exciting month for us here at Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. And so I'm glad to be, on this particular topic. And in particular, because of, during this being Freedom Month, and we're talking a lot about our history, as well as planning for our future. And then we have school starting as well. This topic that we're going to be jumping on is actually a part 3. The first topic, and who knew we'd be doing 3 parts, right? We didn't know we'd be doing 3 parts.
Not at all.
So the first one was the role of Israelite men. And we did that, I don't know, a few months ago, I think.
Yeah.
The role of Israelite men. And then the next one that we did was the conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys. And then all that was understanding how our Israelite culture helps protect our boys, and how the society in this world tries to attack our boys to prevent them from being strong Israelite men and playing the role that we need to allow our nation to be great. We went through so many subtopics in that. There was so much feedback that people had asked, we need to continue down this path. So this next topic that we're doing tonight is countering the conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys. Countering the conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys. Are you guys excited about this topic?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Of course. There's always a lot of talk about the problem, right? And so now let's talk about the solution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And do we have the solution?
Absolutely. Without 100%, without a doubt, right? I mean, look no further. I look no further than the doctor that's on the call.
Oh no.
Yeah. Look no further.
No.
Hey, Doreen says, hey, St. Louis. Hey, Doc.
Hey.
All right. So it's good. No, we got some strong Israelite men here on this call to talk about. And the good thing, too, is that we're going to talk a little bit about our personal experiences. What is it like navigating this world society to get wherever we are right now, as well as insights of what we can do going forward, and suggestions that we have. So we're going to spend about the first third, let's say, about a little bit of restating the problem in different ways. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time really focusing on what are those solutions that we need in order to counter the conspiracy to destroy our boys. Are you guys good with that?
Sounds good.
Oh,
right. Yeah. So don't forget, everyone, please share this link. It's a very valuable and important conversation we're going to have. We want it to be a dynamic conversation. So please like and share, add your comments, add your questions, agree, disagree, whatever it is. It's an important issue, an important topic. And so we want to make sure that we're able to get everyone's perspective on board. All right. So let's see. Last time, I know we took most of the topic that we did last time had to do with actually showing some data. We showed some graphs, some information about just showing the state of emergency that it is concerning boys in this society, Black boys in society especially. Hey, Hilaire, peace. And he said heavyweights platform. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think not talking about my weight, but talking about. All right. So we stayed at quite a bit. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, go back and watch, under Israelite Nationwide Ministries YouTube, watch the role of Israelite men, and then watch the conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys. That will give you a good foundation for some of the things we're going to talk about today. Now we're talking about countering the conspiracy. What do we do? Now we know it's there. Now what can we do in order to fight against it? But before we get into some of those solutions, we also want to just restate some of those items that we had from last time. So and to show the state of emergency that we have. So our producer, can you show the incarceration rates graph? And there's a couple of these are from last time. Incarceration rates. So this is a graph which shows the incarceration rates of various countries, and also highlights Missouri, since we're in Missouri as well. And these rates, how many of individuals does this particular entity incarcerate per 100,000 population? So you can see, in looking at just the countries part, you can see United States incarcerates more of its citizens than any other country on earth. I know it's talked to be the greatest country on earth, but it's also the incarceration country on earth. And look how much more than the UK, than Portugal, even Canada, France, Belgium, Italy, all the way down. That includes, it's not of this thing, more than Canada, more than the Russia, more than China, more than North Korea, right? The United States incarcerates more percentage of its population than anyone else. And the majority of those that are incarcerated are us.
Yeah.
Us. Any thoughts on this graph?
I think it's incredibly disheartening, especially when you consider that, like, again, I think we only have Missouri here, but that, we do have some of these states that are very highly populated by Black people, or by Jacobites, by our brothers and sisters who are living in these circumstances in which, for whatever reason, we see that we are the ones, or wherever we are, happens to be the place that is the most incarcerated place. And I think for that, to see that is extremely disheartening, that we're like more than 10 or 20 times more than entire countries out in Europe, so it's just disheartening to see, for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. And one of the parts that we highlight is Missouri, because we're in Missouri, to kind of show when we speak about, I've lived in different parts of the country. Missouri has it's a heavy weight that's here. It's a heavy weight that's here, and the numbers bear it out, that we are even higher than the national average in America as far as incarceration.
Yeah.
You were going to say, Minister Anthony?
Yeah, being born and raised here, it's sort of a mindset thing. I know when I was younger, right, the mindset is almost like us against the world, especially when it comes to the police, right? We've never really had a good relationship, right? It was never even promoted. You know how officers come to schools and do different things here? When I was coming up, that did not happen. And it's funny, right? When we talk about, you hear narratives like defund the police, right? I mean, we have that in our hands, right? We can literally shut the system down tomorrow.
What I'm laughing, I'm like, okay, what would the streets look like? I guess not different, right? Because they're not doing a great job anyways, obviously. So even with locking up so many. So I don't know, that's another topic altogether.
Oh, yeah.
But no, it's just sort of be stating it to kind of show. So that's overall incarceration. Producer, can you show the next one? The next slide, prison.jpg. So one of the things that is understanding that that's adult population incarceration, right? But there is a pathway that goes there from, and it's called the children or school to prison pipeline. And a lot of the conditions that are especially our young men go through in schools, whether it's underachievement, whether it's the racism they face, whether it's just suspensions or just different environments that they have in school that just doesn't seem to stick. It's preparing them for that pathway of going into jail. It don't happen overnight, right? A lot of times there's a pathway of being groomed for that type of environment. What do you have? Yeah.
This is it's eerie. It's very eerie for me. Again, growing up here, and just some of the things that I was taught, even growing up, it was almost just like these are the things you do to avoid going to jail. Not how to be successful, not putting yourself in a position to be a sort of a standout citizen, but just these are the things you do in order to get away with this or get away with that to avoid going to jail. And seeing that graph, just like, oh man, just it hit you at one time, like, wow, this is like looking at my childhood.
Also being someone, thanks first of all for having me, asking me back, but also being someone who comes from the same environment, like it is really disheartening, because I remember the conversations of, oh, make sure you do this so you don't get stopped by the police or get go to jail. And it's like, I just can't walk down the street. No, you can't go over in that area because they'll stop you. Or don't get caught hanging out in the wrong spots, because you're gonna and I know it's everywhere, but kind of like St. Louis just had its grip on just the whole mindset of being locked in this square, one side of town type of deal. you know, just being locked in. And when you see that, you're saying, well, that they had the pipeline, and it was like, yeah, you can just put one toe on the wrong side of the street and possibly end up in that situation, you know. And it took a lot for, I'm sure, Minister Anthony and myself and a lot of young men out of St. Louis to beat that, to go around that, you know, and it's just finding other avenues, which we're going to talk about later on, I'm sure.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, I remember
Absolutely.
examples when I was younger. Me and my brother specifically, we were about 7 to 8 years old. I'll never forget. There was this huge fight that broke out, huge fight, and me and my brother kind of standing there, and the police walked up and grabbed me and my brother, and like, in both hands with children, like throwing us against the car, right? And we're crying. We're like, what is going on? What is going on? And trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And we're devastated and distraught. And we go home, right? And it was almost like, of course, right, my dad was upset, but it was almost like that deep sigh of just like, man, this city, man, this state.
Mhm.
It was almost just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Brush it off.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like it's no wonder how, you know, why black boys and black kids, you know, get that talk about the police so often. That it's like a normal thing from generation to generation. And seeing those statistics, it makes sense. It's like, you know, you can't ignore the fact that these numbers don't lie and do show that, again, we are in a state or a system in which there is this animosity in which we get the short end of the stick in terms of our interactions with police officers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing in St. Louis, like every quote unquote bad neighborhood, there's probably a thriving good neighborhood about 15 minutes away. Like everything in St. Louis, it's very small. As Shelby said, like you're kind of never really feel ever safe because I feel there's almost like danger if you drive 10 minutes in the wrong direction, or 10 minutes north, or 10 minutes east, or 10 minutes west. So it's like all around you. So it would make sense why like the culture would reflect it.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, so you're maneuvering through this and you made it to this point here. What about some of your colleagues or friends or acquaintances along the way? What were some of the experiences you observed that, again, going through, again, they're calling this understanding as a conspiracy. So looking back, does that fit kind of what you experienced observing?
Oh yeah, big time.
The culture, like I feel like it picks up a lot of people along the way, and I think it really starts young as you start to see people, I guess, who delve off into things that aren't safe or aren't, or I guess would kind of put them in combat with, as Anthony said, being an upstanding citizen, and that it starts young. I'd say it starts around middle school is where we really start to see that those differences like that.
Were you going to say something?
It almost it becomes a sense of like a badge of honor, right? To get into trouble, to where this is something that's easily relatable to your peers now. I used to, honestly, this is my honest opinion, I used to be embarrassed to say that I've never been in police handcuffs because everyone around me had some story related to jail. I have never been to jail. I've never had an experience where I was ever locked up by the police, right? I'm proud to say that now as an Israelite man that I've never been in police handcuffs. But growing up.
Yeah, but can we talk about that real quick though? I think that's a really good point. Is that as black boys, I think there's often this like level of like cool factor that we have sort of put in this value of like, I've had this confrontation, or I've had this like, you know, I've met face to face with oppression, you know what I'm saying? And I think like that is so common for us. And as you said, it puts us in a position of like, this is what we are valuing. So we never have time to think about like, oh, well, how can I like progress and do these things? Because my like mindset is so much on that negative at baseline that I get sort of those like cool points, you know, like as you said, if I've been in cuffs before, if I've been arrested before, you know what I'm saying? I think it's very interesting, you know.
Right.
Oh yeah, you get called called soft. You get called I mean seriously, growing up in the city, this in this area, from the city to county, and Sherry knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? You get called a county boy, you get all these different things because it was there, like you said, that sense of pride, right? That sense of pride was definitely always into trouble, always into, right? This is what a term, right? Geeks or nerds or sellouts come into play.
Square.
Square, exactly. Because you're afraid to get into trouble.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting because understand, we're Jacobites are in various statuses, various environments. There's no one environment that's like that, right? Doreen says, bad grades, been to jail, good life. We're all glorifying the nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's true. Whether you live in an environment or not, like, even on this call right now, on this panel right now, we have individuals who grew up in some of those bad neighborhoods. We have some that have grown up middle class. We're not in those neighborhoods, but yet and still, that's how I grew up in a middle class environment in the suburbs. My parents moved out of the city. I'm from New York, and we moved out to New Jersey, the suburbs, when I was like 7 years old. And so personally, I wasn't in that environment, but I know my cousins, I know people that I grew up with in the suburbs, Black people in the suburbs, Jacobites, would always gravitate to the city, and it was always, and to me, it was almost that search of, dang, I'm here, but I'm in a predominantly white environment. I'm not really identifying with this culture. I got to find, so I'm identifying with the culture, even though I don't grow up there. I replicate it here in some form or fashion. You know what I mean? I saw that growing up, and that was, like you said, the cool factor. That was the cool factor.
And I think that just to add to that, sorry, but just to add to that is, I think there's also something to be said about the fact that, like, even if you grew up in the suburbs, you're not like that far removed. It's maybe like one generation removed from being in a state where, like it would have been in a much more impoverished state or much more close to that state of oppression. Similar, I think, to thinking about the idea of like even the oppression in our history. It's like we think we're so far, but it's like that wasn't really that far like ago, So I think even in that, I think speaks a lot to the fact that, like, again, we feel almost more comfortable to say, I'm just used to being over here, like I'm used to being in this state of oppression more so than I am being in the state of like comfort or middle class or upper class. You know what I'm saying? We just will gravitate to that's what I belong to, So
yeah. Well, I think also it's about who's defining our culture.
For sure.
When they say Black culture,
for sure.
Well, who defines that, right? And a lot of times, as Doreen had mentioned, a lot of those negativities end up defining that cool factor. And again, we're talking about this whole conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys. So we get caught up in that and following this value system that we didn't put it together, right? It was something that was sort of placed upon us that we gravitated to, So that's why it's important for us to really examine this because, we're being manipulated. Now, I saw that growing up.
I think part of it could also be there could be a feeling of maybe rejection from the kind of similar to what Jeff was saying, but the whole idea of not identifying yourself with the certain areas or certain communities or certain lifestyles or certain thought patterns. I think it's, but I think it could be social as well, because a lot of the communities that are doing well, you don't really see too many people like yourself, maybe into the same things, talk like you, walk like you. So, and so I think that could also be a part of it as well. And so you might even reject yourself even before they reject you, maybe assuming they'll reject you, or even if they don't reject you, I think part of it is mental. Just me personally, like there's always a feeling of when you're the only Black person anywhere. So I think fighting through that is also, I think, part of the struggle of trying to do better for yourself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think when we look at that conspiracy, right, that narrative of, especially we talk about who's the one that's putting the name out there. When we go back to those who even fought for freedom, they were deemed as bad people, bad guys, right? And it's almost like we took on that identity, not really looking at what it is they were doing, but just at the outlook of it. Even they love to toot up Martin Luther King, right? But he was demonized throughout his life for his mission. And we take it on and say, hey, we're going to go against society. We're going to be those bad guys sometimes. not really realizing what it is that we're doing to each other, or the even the, like you said, the culture that's being created for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just kind of jump and dive into it and say, hey, this is just what it is. You know, you hear this term all the time. You know how it is in the hood. That's just how it is in the hood. And it's like you said, where did that come from?
Felicia Singleton says gamers rap glorifies criminal behavior by design as well. Music changed seemingly overnight.
That's true. That's a very true statement. I think that's one of the things why they want to be bad guys, right? It's glorified by even other people. They look at it and oh man, he went to jail. He was yelling back at the police. He was, all of this is they put it in music. They put it on TV. So when we look at it, we like, well, when others look at it, they're like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. Or I get attention from actually being that guy.
Yeah.
It makes someone to be that guy.
Yeah, I think
Which is
a loss of control sometimes of the culture a little bit. And I think sometimes we don't even realize like when we're being manipulated or when we're being grouped. And when we're grouped and like we don't know where the loud voice is coming from, but we assume that's the loudest voice. But we don't really pay attention like where is the source of this voice that's telling us this is where our culture is supposed to go.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of times we don't realize that there's a culture that is not being dictated by what's best for us, but it's dictated by capitalism and a whole bunch of other reasons and money. So,
So let me restate, and that's a good point, Ezra. Willie Jackson said, first we have to know what our culture is, 100%. And we have to restate something we said prior in the last lesson as well. All these forces out here as a conspiracy to destroy our Israelite boys and ultimately destroy our nation to prevent it from growing. But if our culture and identity is strong enough and we know who we are, then we cannot be moved. We cannot be diminished. We cannot be, unable to get to our goals and what we need to do because we have that. But because we don't know who we are, the best that we have is, we're from Africa and come from kings and queens. That's kind of as specific as it can get in some abstract way. But that's it. And so other than that, there's no foundation. So you can, who are you? Like you said, sometimes because we don't have anybody really telling us, well, the music can tell us, right? And music is not just a form of education. Music, a form of entertainment. It's also a form of communication and education. And you absorb it, and it affects you. And you can, it can make you encourage you or inspire you, or it gets you to deep level. So I remember. Herbert says this is incredible. I missed it. This is an incredible topic. I grew up protected and didn't realize it. My parents moved me to the suburbs, and I really didn't realize and understand the actual impact. Yeah, absolutely. I can identify with that as well. But what I was getting to was that lost my train of thought. So going back to what Herbert was saying, it's like I remember that too when I was. I know. I'm back. I remember, again, I'm a little older. I remember the beginnings and Sugar Hill Gang and coming up with Run DMC and all those guys, just all, coming up. And I remember it was morphing and growing, and it was almost a question, is this like just a fad or is this really going to last? I remember having those conversations with my friends, and it was just everywhere. And I remember it growing into educational rap. There was a phase where it became educational. Then that's when you had the guys like
NWA,
Public Enemy, all those, that type of thing, educational thing, and talking about our history and all those various things. But then shortly thereafter, it took a left, and it went totally to gangster rap and so on and so forth, and went down that direction. And then you had the whole East Coast, West Coast, it went into all of that. So when it took a toll, I saw it, it was one of those things, people who watch things happen and people who say, hey, what happened? But I definitely saw that trajectory of it looked like someone took the steering wheel and said, nope, not going that way, because it was actually promoting some positive messages at one point. There actually was the educated rapper, that was a part that was there, but It took a different path. So the understanding exactly like I think Ezra said, who's controlling these messages, who's like observing that this is having an impact, and then saying, hey, we're going to have to, let this continue, but then let's put a message on there that's not going to allow them to be challenge, the status quo.
Yeah, and I think it extends even past music too, because a lot of the music companies, they're attached to entertainment companies. So if you look at something like Universal or
Sony,
Sony, like
yeah,
entertainment as we know it, right? So it dives deep. So the people who have the power and the resources to fund a song that can spread across the globe and impact culture aren't the people that look like us. So,
Yeah.
And to add to that same point again, like think about how much money, comes from just like an artist that's, I don't know, some random artist that they generate for these for the music industry.
Yes.
No one is going to, unplug that overnight so that you could benefit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
yeah.
we are not us, but the company is benefiting from that already. The industry already benefits from you doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Regardless to what those repercussions are.
Yeah. And Hilaire says, great point. We need to know our culture and family customs because the new Egypt stole our identity and make us believe we are nothing. It only depends on drugs and hip hop and violence and music and video and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a conspiracy, right? Is it Psalms? What is it? Is it Psalm 68? I forget.
I think so.
The nations have come together to confederate against us, so the name of Israel will be no more in remembrance. And you can see those pieces. Like you said, Dr. Blair, that, it's that one popular artist who's making all that money for himself is funding a whole industry. There are like hundreds of people, not just him, who are actually getting rich off of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
That reminds me of the next thing we're going to go to. Producer, can you bring up the next one, the next slide? 40 million. Next slide. Yep. $40 million slaves. You guys read this book?
Favorite books. One of my favorite books.
Yeah, $40 million slave. So, if you ever read the intro to this book, the original title was going to be something along the lost children of Israel. Read the intro to this book. It's definitely something you should have in your library. $40 million slaves. So William Roden, he was a New York Times reporter and sports commentator. I think he was on ESPN for a little bit as well. And anyway, so he wrote this book, and what he does is that he chronicles sports, athletes, going all the way back to slavery through the whole time with Jack Johnson. If you guys don't know who Jack Johnson is, boxer from the early 1900s, heavyweight champion, beat all the white boxers and showed that blacks were not inferior. And all the way through Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, even all the way up to LeBron James. Oh, is LeBron James in it, or is it Michael Jordan? So anyway, he goes all the way through to kind of show the phenomenon of a athlete being taken and given special privileges, whether it's money or sometimes freedom or whatever. All the way back from slavery is like nothing new, but the idea of what those privileges the athlete uses it for, whether it's for himself or whether it's to promote and help his people, has been challenged all along the way, right? So I'm going to read just a little paragraph out about that. So what he argues convincingly is that integration posed relatively few problems for the white sports world, which quickly gained access to a huge pool of cheap talent, right? So, but that it perpetrated the disaster for a black industry, practically eliminating every black person involved in sports. The coaches, the owners, the trainers, the accountants, the lawyers, the secretaries, and so on. And so basically what he's talking about is prior to integration, we're talking about specifically the Negro League. And I know this is one of your favorite topics, Minister Anthony. The Negro League. Negro League in baseball was very successful. It was very successful. had star players that were better than anything that they had in the white baseball league. They had their own stadiums. They had their own counter and food, concessions. They had their umpires. They had all these various things, like a whole industry. It wasn't just the star players. Once integration started, and they actually started pulling Jackie Robinson and others from that, then the Negro leagues folded. And so now it wasn't just these star players that were now going to be able to play in the white leagues, but now there's no more black coaches. There's no more, the whole industry fell down. So to me, I thought about this when you mentioned that, Dr. Blair, about, if there's one artist that you see in the front, there's a whole industry of individuals who are getting paid as well. And depending who those individuals are, is whether, what direction are they going to groom him in? Is it going to be beneficial for his community or not? Is it community beneficial for another community? It has all these ramifications. It's not just about the one person. It's the whole impact to the society that he has. So I just thought it was very interesting.
Oh yeah, I love this book so much because Rube Foster is one of my favorite people from history, right? Because he went out of his way, right? They were planting barns. They were going like on farms and play baseball and do whatever. He developed the Negro League. So Rube Foster is actually the creator of the Negro League. Mm-hmm. He actually developed the league so much that he actually sent an invitation to the New York Yankees. He said, "Hey, we'll play your best team." The Yankees owner, right, thinking that Negro players were just a commodity, right? He happily agreed. Like, "Hey, let's play baseball." The commissioner of baseball at the time hurried up and stepped in and was like, "Hey, listen. These guys will destroy us. Do you know how we would look? Do you know what it would do to the psyche?" Rube Foster, knew that for his players and for Jacobites everywhere, the psyche of the people would be through the roof to see their players be so successful, as deemed as, right, the when you hear that term, the big leagues or the major leagues, right? These titles and terms didn't exist until there were offsets, right? Where we talk about those Negro leagues and things of that nature. Like you said, which is why even now, everything that even starts up quickly gets wiped away.
Yeah.
Whether through integration, because a part of that now comes, we get to pick and choose who we want. Jackie Robinson was, and we thank him for his accomplishments, was not the greatest Negro League player, but he was one willing to listen to what they had to say.
And had the persona that they felt was not threatening. And
yes, the lighter skin,
audiences. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, to me, I don't know. This is not something you learn in school, but it's just so interesting to me again to see. Again, it wasn't just about the one player, Jackie Robinson. It was, or what it represent, but you're talking about hundreds and thousands of people now out of work because of this grab of the talent pool from our communities to promote their thing, and our thing crumbles. And that starts a part of that conspiracy again to destroy our boys, because now they get to pick and choose who they want and what hoops they have to go through in order to be a part of that system, because it's the only game in town. Right?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about this, it may sound like, oh, conspiracy, but a part of what we're talking about now is specifically, we've seen this and we've been a part of this. And while we were in school, we saw the importance of sports, and especially in Black schools, and how that being promoted as the only way as a Black person you can be successful. Either you got to play sports or you got to do music. That's the only pathway. Well, who's dictating that? I'm not saying that, right? People are not saying that. It's the larger society saying that these are the only ones that we're going to be able to pull out and putting within our minds of our children, especially our sons. That's the only thing you can do, right? Shut up and dribble. Right, that's the narrative that's said. That's a part of the conspiracy itself. No one is saying you have to do this or have to do that, but planting the seeds and that we come to those conclusions in ourselves that this is what I have to do. So we wanted to go back, and if you could, producer, if you can play the video, drive to Vashon, and if Shelby and Mr. Anthony can kind of take us through that. What's Vashon?
So Vashon High School is the second oldest high school for Jacobites in Missouri. So prior to Vashon, there was a school called Sumner, and at that time, these were the only black schools west of the Mississippi River. There was no schools anywhere in other states specifically set up for Jacobite children.
Say that again, 'cause I don't know if people understand that.
So not Bashan at the moment, but Sumner High School. This is the oldest high school for Jacobite children in St. Louis, in Missouri, period. At the time of its inception, this was the only school Jacobite children can go to west of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
So
I remember, so I know when I moved to St. Louis, I moved to an area, and there's a historically black area next to, in Kirkwood, called Meacham Park, and talking with the black community there, and they would say, yeah, their parents, only place they could go, only black schools they had there only went up to 8th grade. And if a black student wanted to go to high school, they would have to get bused over to either Sumner or Vashon if they wanted to go to high school. So it was very famous. And if you got to go there, you were very proud because there's the only place. You couldn't go to the white school, and there was no other high school there for you that you could go to. You'd have to go all the way to the city in order to go to Sumner.
Exactly. And due to the rising population of Mill Creek Valley, I know El Jeffrey recognizes that city.
Absolutely.
Actually, that's a city that was in downtown St. Louis, where I grew up, not too far away from. By the time I came along, it was already taken over by the city. But due to that growing population, they said, hey, we need to create another school. Now, get this. These are Jacobite schools. These are schools built specifically for Jacobite children. All other schools in the region were integrated.
Mm-hmm.
But these two schools were specifically designed for Jacobite children. And one of the most famous things about these schools is that they moved about 3 times each. They got new buildings. One of the reasons they got new buildings is because the parents, Jacobite parents, did not want their children walk past gallows and morgues and all these different things on their way to school. During the video, I know it's kind of laggy and choppy. You see all these burnt out homes, just destroyed homes. It's a lot of drug use, high grass. That's a lot of desolation all the way around these schools.
I think we made a video maybe choppy, but you could look at the images. They may be able to come through, producer. I can go through Vashon 2 through Vashon 6. You can tell us, what are we looking at?
This is right down the street from the school. It is a smoke shop right down the street from a high school that's promoting cannabis, CBD to come in and smoke.
Mm-hmm. And what's crazy?
I mean, these are homes. These are literally homes across the street from the school.
Right. And what's wild is this is
so during our journey, me and Shelby kind of drove down there, and we were like, hey, let's get out and kind of take some pictures and videos. And we look and we see homeless people doing drugs. Right. Again, sits right down the street from the school. So as the kids are walking to school, this is what they see. Now, this particular slide, the Annie Malone Children and Family Services, and I'll give a quick excerpt about Annie Malone. She was a chemist and entrepreneur, one of the first women millionaires in the country. But she was very generous with her money because she wanted to use her money as a way to inspire Jacobite children to become entrepreneurs. She started a cosmetology school for young Jacobite children to really hone their skills and really to expand their minds. One of her former employees, everyone might be familiar with, who is Madam C.J. Walker. She trained her and gave her start in the industry, again, to help young children. So this Annie Malone home used to be called the St. Louis Children's Orphanage. She donated a large portion of her money to the children who were here to really help the community. It's funny, because today we have millionaires, things of that nature, right? They donate to charities like, United Way and Red Cross. Annie Malone's mindset was, I have to give it straight to the people in an effort to not only to just give them a handout, but to show them that it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so this is located right across from Sumner High School. And when you see just that correlation, right, you talk about transforming the mindset, to know what that history is and to see that and to be there. Can you imagine if you were an orphan to know that story, to hear that story, and to go right across the street to this high school, the oldest high school for Jacobite children. That history is so amazing, but look what it's surrounded with.
The environment. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that, as far as, because what, with all this despair around there, even the idea of the orphanage is good, that there's help and refuge for individuals that are in that state, for orphans. Just all of that even is emblematic of what the state and condition of the people are, right?
Yeah.
That orphanage is right there. There's some breakdown in the family that you need orphanages, right? There's something going on. Felicia Singleton says, why hasn't this historical landmark been preserved?
It may have. It may
Yeah,
have.
I
I'm not
think it
sure.
is. Yeah, I think. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think they've they have been, I think, tried to tear it down and do various things. I think it's moved a couple of times, but I think that they've tried to preserve it as much as possible. But a part of this is what we're talking about, because we can really go deep into a lot of this, just the whole, or the urban environment that we find ourselves in most of the time, and how it affects the outcomes in our lives and our breakdown of our families. But specifically in this environment, as a young Black male growing up, walking down the street, seeing this environment around, what is it then that are you given as an opportunity is sports? And one of the things you guys are telling me is, it may not have been known for academics at right now. Back in the day, it was for sure, because it's the only game in town to get educated as a Black person. But it's quickly turned to become not education, but sports.
Sports
being the big thing for some there. Tell me a little bit about that, Shelby, because I think that was some of your experience.
Yeah, my experience actually comes from Bethshan. That's actually where I graduated from, and it's a big basketball school, which is everybody wanted to go. The guys who went, they wanted to go and play ball. That was the what you would say is our out, right? That's how you find yourself going to college and possibly in the big scheme of things, you make it to the NBA or below, or as they would call it. And what
were there any that made it to the NBA from
there were one for sure. Looked like it might be a couple more on the way now, but you're big and you're popular in the area. Like everybody knows you. Going D1 or going to a top NCAA school was the big thing too. But I wanted to just talk about the video. I hate that we didn't get to see it, because even the buildings that we seen, like some of those buildings that we saw in the video, I actually walk past every day, right, to go to school. And at the time that I was going, there were people living there, but also we had the crack industry, right? I mean, we had the crack epidemic that happened, and it was breaking the places down. And then now to go back at my age now and revisit and see how that whole area is just gone. I mean, look at the grass. We were talking about that, me and Minister Anthony, about how the grass is not cut. It's just nobody's keeping it up. But then immediately as we turn the corner and we hit the school, you got pretty green grass for the football field, right? And the school looked like it's just well kept, but everything around it. So the kids that's walking to school every day, here it is, I'm walking through a bunch of jungle-like trash trying to get to this, what is, the school. It's this glorified school that is glorified for basketball. It's not necessarily glorified for, the academic side, which is what I wish and I would like to see all of us, see us change that, because we can, like Dr. Jeffrey said, or Dr. Blair said, there's $1 billion mines in this school. They can produce so many things and thoughts, and there's so many things around, the basketball, like you said, other jobs and other professions that can be talked about and these kids can gravitate to, besides just walking through and getting there. And it's just, we're just going to focus on the basketball, which that is a good thing, a start. But here it is, the two oldest schools in the city. One is known for basketball, one is known for football. You know, we're not known for, you know, academics and being those the people who know everything, you know. So being a product from that, it really, it's saddening to me. It hurt me because I see those buildings and I'm like, it's just tore down around here. Nobody cares.
Not to mention the huge gates around the school. Talk
Oh,
about that prison to the school to prison pipeline.
Mhm.
There are huge gates around the school.
yes.
The only time you see huge gates around a building that size is prisons.
Yeah.
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 So again, and I want us to thank you so much for sharing that part of your history, Shelby and Minister Anthony. And so Ezra, you know, you went to a middle class, affluent school, predominantly white school. I think black population there maybe was about 15% or so, something like that. And what was that environment like, considering black people, especially black boys, academic compared to sports?
Um, you know, you think it would be different, but it's really not any different. I still found myself as I was going through middle school and high
Can you
school.
speak up? Speak up a little bit.
Uh, can you hear me?
Yeah, just talk louder.
Okay. Yeah. It's not too different, to be honest. I still found, so for instance in middle school, and that's why I was saying middle school is kind of where you start to see disparity, despite the place, because Kirkwood School District, where it was, it's considered a very, you know, well um, uh, uh, educated area, and it's a good school district. It's considered one of the best in the state academically. But when you go through it, I think you get a different perception of the school versus just the numbers, because there's just huge disparity and gaps between those numbers based off of race. And a lot of like my fellow black friends and students and peers, it was around high school when you start to see a break off, as far as now I'm the only black person in my honors class, or I'm the only black person in my AP class. And there's usually a handful of black students in any class considered high or honors, or as far as doing well academically. And so those same narratives, as far as sports being the only way out, even in a school in which academics is important, even in that in that in those cases. And so you still see the same thing as far as people leaning towards sports, and a lot of black students leaning towards sports as their way out. And I can recall some conversations that were slightly even disturbing in a way. I remember it was around the time when we're supposed to be, where when a lot of people are thinking about college, which would be the end of senior year ish, and people are thinking about college, and a lot of people are starting to apply and trying to figure things out. And I remember I heard a conversation with some black students, and it was a couple conversations, to be honest. It wasn't once. This was like consistent. There's like a culture there, where one person I knew was trying to apply to the school, and he was like showing his friends, and he was like, "Look, I think I might try and apply for the school." And his friends like just laughed at him, and then told him like, "You know, you're not smart enough to get into that school." And then like he closed his laptop, and then that was it. That was the conversation. There was another moment, and this is in a school in which you see all your white peers doing well and all about to go out to college. And there was another instance where someone was talking about their GPA, and they were talking about how they had like a 2 something, and
Had a what?
they had like a 2 point something.
Okay,
And
which is like a
yeah, so on
average.
in the U.S., yeah, so that's the C average. So the U.S., a 4 is a 3 is a B, a 2 is a C, a 1 is a D. And so they had about a 2 average. And I remember the people at the lunch table or whatever, they were all told they were like talking about it, and he was saying, "Well, I mean, that's pretty good for like a black person." And I just remember,
That's pretty good for a black person.
yes, he said that's pretty good for a black person.
Wow.
And I remember just hearing those words, and it's like, wow, if you're saying this verbally, then internally, there's probably a bigger war going on. And what you think and what you observe and how you see the world is all through that lens. For you to say that out loud and like with no confidence, feeling like there's nothing wrong with that sentence. And so, yeah, that's just the type of rhetoric I think you heard a lot. And sports was the exit. But as we know, like sports is, you know, it's not everybody gets to make it all the way.
Right.
So, you know.
Right. No, thank you for sharing. And that's why I'm glad we have this panel of all different types of experiences where it doesn't matter. Some people want to say, oh, it just has to do with poverty. It's like, no, it's not just poverty. It's not just the drug addicts in the corner. Obviously, those are terrible environments. And it's almost like, how does anyone get out of that situation sane, right? Because that's not a normal situation. It shouldn't be. But even for us, for Jacobites that come out of that and even live in more affluent, middle class, affluent areas, there's another set of challenges. And it doesn't matter where you are, because if we don't have the understanding of our identity, you're going to be lost and you're going to be subjected to whatever the society is going to present to you. So you have situations like you just said, Ezra, where you're in one of the best schools. This is the best teachers. This is the best, they have $10 million budgets to educate you and to give you all these extracurricular activities and all these things that's happening, but yet and still you're having the same mindset as if you're living in the environment where you have the prostitutes and the crack and all these various things. It's like you never left because your mindset is still there. You know what I mean? So it almost doesn't matter. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, to kind of show that it's not just about the poor environment, but wherever we are, we have the same condition that we're in.
Right.
Yeah. And I think wherever,
someone asked the question that it'd be great to have a panel that would have UK and Canada on the panel. I agree. I would love for that to happen maybe next time. Maybe there's a part 4 where we bring that in. But I got you, because we were thinking about that, and we have some information here to kind of show that this is not just a USA thing. I know a lot of time Canada, UK want to wag their finger and say, wow, US is really crazy. But trust me, this goes wherever we are in the diaspora. This is where we at as men, as boys. This is the condition that we face. So can you bring up the UK article? So Black Caribbean underachievement in schools in England. So again, wanted to show, the worst thing, or what impacts us the most, Jacobite community the most, that, as Israelite boys, they're going to be in that environment until we have our own, schools. And so it's yes, we have the school to prison pipeline, right? But it's not everyone is not going to get necessarily caught up in that, or even caught up in like, oh, the only way out is sports or whatever, But one thing that is that's the common denominator of all of those things is underachievement. In other words, we do not want our Israelite boys not to reach their full potential. And who is telling them what the potential is? Who is showing and looking to see what is their potential? Are we relying on our schools to tell us that? Are we relying on our teachers to tell us that? On society to tell us that? Again, if they're in control of that question, answering that question for us, then we shouldn't be shocked when our young men are acting in a certain way or making certain choices or decisions. So anyway, I'm bringing this up to kind of show, even in the UK, the big problem of Black Caribbean underachievement in schools in England. Can you go to page 7 really quick? Producer, page 7. All right. Yeah, let's see. Is that page 7? No, go down. I'm sorry, that's page number 2. Go down till you see page 7. All right. So let's read that middle one. In all the case study schools we visited. No, I'm sorry. Is that page? Yep. Okay. I'm trying to see. Go down to the next one. This is a long report. So over 150 pages long. Well, generally speaking, I just wanted to really bring this up, where it really was speaking to the fact that, you know what, go back up to like the index so I can kind of show individuals some of that. Go right up. Yep. A little bit more. little bit more, all the way up to the index. And it sort of highlights some of the topics that, okay, there we go, right there, exactly. So chapter 4, where it speaks about all these various things that lead into the underachievement of Black boys. Teachers' low expectations, curriculum relevance, lack of diversity, lack of targeted support, negative peer pressure, cultural clashes, just a lot of those various things. So I'm bringing this report up to show. It'd be great if you guys look this up and kind of look at it yourself. I'm trying to show how universal this problem is of our young boys in particular not being able to being fed and given what they need in order to be successful, not reaching their full potential, and being steered or geared to underachievement. All right. Let me go into the next one, which is, can you pull up the other one that has to do with Canada and Toronto? All right. This is, so Black students in Toronto streamed into courses below their ability, the report finds. And if we go lower, you're going to see in Canada, they have this thing where when you go into elementary school or high school, let me see if I can find it in this one. All right, I'm reading the middle paragraph. The report says educational streaming, a policy in which students are grouped based on ability, was supposed to be ended in 1999, but data shows Black students continue to be directed towards essential and applied programs of study away from academic courses more so than white and other racialized students. In other words, again, our children are not being given or being, even if their ability is there, they're still being geared into less challenging courses and into different paths. And someone in Canada can comment on this, but the way that you are, when you're in the schools in Canada, you'll be able to pick either an applied course or an academic university course. And I think in America, it's probably more like the standard course, maybe the AP course track. And a lot of times, most of the times, the Black students, even if they have the abilities, are geared toward the less challenging courses, right? Again, I'm trying to show, or we're trying to show, how much the society, in particular the school systems and society in general, are gearing our boys not to become or reach their full potential. Doreen says, how does this correlate to the scriptures for all the new people watching, and how do we combat all these negatives?
Oh yes, I like that question. This goes straight into Exodus chapter 4. We talk a lot about Moses, right? And Moses' situation. Moses was raised up in the highest Egyptian household, right? He was raised in Pharaoh's household. What Moses went through, right? So you would think, right, Moses has access to all the education, everything that the best people in the world have access to, right? But Moses still had doubts. He still had doubts about himself. It reminds me so much when Ezra was speaking about just even going to a school like Kirkwood, a very prominent school, as a Jacobite, and just the mindset that Jacobites had at that time, right? So if we can all turn to, you have the Bible, jump to Exodus 4. Right, so a little bit of background, right? Moses is walking, the bush is burning. Moses is now giving it, the God of Israel is giving Moses instruction, right? And Moses asks for the name. The God of Israel tells him his name, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now, as Moses is giving this instruction, let's kind of jump into what Moses' response was. Let's go to verse 9. Exodus chapter 4, verse 9. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken to thy voice, that thou shalt take of the water of the river and pour it upon the dry land, and that the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moses said unto the Lord, O my God, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Who maketh the dumb or deaf, or the seeing or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of whom thou wilt send. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what ye shall do. This right here reminds me so much of everything we were just talking about. Take someone in Moses' situation, in his position, growing up the way he grew up, right? But he still knew, I'm not these people. You talk about those same doubts that others had at the schools they were in. Look at the doubts that Moses had about himself, right? This isn't just anybody talking to Moses to tell him what it is that he can do. This is the God of all gods talking to Moses, telling him, look, I will be with you. Just go and do this. And Moses is still saying, hey, you know what? Just send somebody else. Just send somebody else because I can't do this. And you see
It's
how the
funny.
anger.
I was going to say, it's just kind of funny because again, I correlate that to also, again, we don't have sort of like the words of sort of the Israelites that were sort of in the field, like doing the work and everything while Moses was in the big house. So we don't have their words, but I assume that even they would have not only a doubt about their ability, but also even they would have these sort of feelings of wanting to escape even their situation too as well. And so we have even again two situations with Moses, who grew up in a good circumstance, but not with his people, and still under the umbrella of that oppression, and those who grew up with their people, still under oppression. They're both trying to escape something, and they're both oppressed by something. And I think for us here in this country, I think throughout the world as Black people, as you were saying, there's really no difference when you look at where you grew up in terms of like your socioeconomic status. You're still, if you're not at the point of being able to control your culture, to control your ability to praise your God, to control your circumstance, you're still running from something because it's uncomfortable to be in the situation. And so you're constantly trying to go against a ceiling that feels like it's constricting you, especially again, as a young boy wanting to be a young and hopefully an old man one day. There's an innate feeling of, I am a cub and I want to be a lion.
Right.
And I can't do that in the circumstance of the current situation where I can't control my own culture, my own destiny, my own ability to have a family, to make money, to live my life as a man. So I think, again, it's just very correlated when I think about the story of Moses and what we go through, regardless of your socioeconomic status in today's context. But the other scripture that does come to mind too is the scripture of even Daniel, who also was one of the ones that got picked out of Israel as Israel kind of crumpled. I think the same thing we see all the time when it comes to sports, when it comes to all types of things, where we sort of have our talented Black ones go into these fields that sort of are in rooms where they're the only one. And then we have, again, the society, again, largely of Jacobites that ends up crumpling on itself again and again and again.
Absolutely.
So again, it's just very correlated.
Absolutely. And so that absolutely. And that's what kind of we want to do. We kind of were laying out again, this emerge again. The point we started out, this is an emergency. And we know we're featuring Jacobite boys and Jacobites, but we as Israel are still living in this society, and our Israelite boys are in that environment as well. Jacobites are still glorified, I think, a lot of times in our minds, even in our young men's minds. And so the idea is, again, as Israelites, talking about pulling from the scriptures, whether we're talking about Moses in Egypt, whether we're talking about Daniel in Babylon, whether we're talking about just all the way through, even Jesus to Christ and who he chose to be with him in order to help support him, the idea of understanding how do we do that in this environment is we need to understand first, this is where we are in this condition that we're in. So right now, what are the tools? Again, how do we counter the conspiracy that we do see around us? And hopefully I want to make sure we see there is a conspiracy, no matter what state it may be. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So in Exodus, it was specifically called out, hey, these guys are getting too big. Let's come together and let's kill all the boys so that before they become big and they can then threaten us or join with another nation, right? That's how Exodus starts out. And then we have the story of Moses. Here we have a very similar thing happening, but it's not necessarily shown explicitly. And because it's one of those things, when you're in it, you sometimes don't see it, you know what I mean? Because you're in it. I'm sure when Shelby was going through, he didn't understand there's a conspiracy upon him, making him go in that direction, or any of us, as we go through that, So it's really for us identifying that now, Israelite nation, worldwide ministries, and the culture of Israel is the answer, right? That's really the point that we're getting to. Here is the answer that we have to insulate our young men and boys from the conspiracy that will have them underachieve and go into the path that will glorify and support that culture, as opposed to build up our nation and our society. And that's basically the formation of what we want to talk about for the rest of the time that we have. And so an example that you gave, Minister Anthony, was so great. We went through, there were some of the things that we wanted to go through and kind of elaborate a little bit on. And one of those has to do with the support one of the things that we need is about supporting one another, right? And the story that you gave about Aaron as his sibling coming there to also to support Moses. Moses couldn't do the job if it wasn't for his siblings coming there and helping and supporting him, right?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. When you think about the task that was placed upon Moses, right? Even with the God of Israel being there, right? Moses being a man and having an understanding, right? Like even the God of Israel was like, okay, go get your brother Aaron. Aaron will go with you. He will be your mouthpiece. He will speak. And even further on down the line, right? Miriam, right, who was a prophetess, and what she did, and like you talk about that support that we must have for each other. Again, one of the things that we know is talked about in our community is the lack of unity, but the support that we have for each other. Also, if I can pull from another scripture real quick, just to kind of further elaborate on that support, if we could all go to 1 Samuel 18, 1 Samuel chapter 18, and we talk about that support. Imagine if we had this support, right? This is that we talk about those answers to counter on that conspiracy. This is that support that's needed. Verse 1, and it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and to his bow and to his girdle. I love this so much. So here is Saul is the king of Israel at this time, right? And Jonathan is his son. And David is kind of, coming up, right? David is fighting the bears and lions and stuff, right? And David goes through what he goes through. And now he was going back and forth between, the king and his father's house. He was now so well loved, right? That King Saul is like, no, you can just stay here. You can just stay here. And Jonathan, his son, right? In a lot of situations, you see jealousy may come into play. But this is a situation where Jonathan is like, yes, this is my brother. I love him. I love him like my own soul. Like Jesus the Christ said, right? The greatest two commandments. Love your brethren, right? One is, hey, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and love your brethren like yourself. Here's that example right here, where he's stripping off his garments to give it to David. Talk about that support that we're sorely lacking in the Jacobite community, but in the Israelite nation. That's exactly what we do. That's exactly what this is.
So definitely, Hilaire says we need to believe in what we've been told by our elder Shadrach and the Supreme Council. We need to fight and support each other because the world always wants to divide us. We focus on our future generations, I think is what it says. Absolutely. So we're talking about, obviously, to help counter the conspiracy, is we got to have the knowledge of self, identity, understanding who we are, who our God is. That's the foundation. Next thing that we're talking about, too, in no particular order as well, is the emotional support that we have to have for one another. And you show that example in the scriptures where it comes with Aaron supporting his brother Moses. It comes with Jonathan supporting David. And even though, understand Jonathan and David, they should have been enemies, right? Because David is pretty much taking Jonathan's job, right? Jonathan's going to be next in line to be king, right? After his father dies. But now David is the next one. They should be enemies, but instead they loved one another and supported one another. And their story is very fascinating. That type of support is needed. Do you guys agree in the nation for our young men as a part of the solution?
Oh yes. Think about what it shows to the others around them.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that example that's put forth, even as they get older and as they start to have children. Think about seeing that out in the world of like, oh man, look, I remember that. That's the bond that I want to have. That's the love and support that we want to cherish and always remind each other of, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about being a nation, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ezra.
No, even just to add what you're saying, you talk about being a nation. I think it's the culture that you build, which is why Israelite Nation, we're Israelite Nation history and culture, because the culture is so important. That way we have a place where we could put each other up and be with each other and respect each other and uplift each other through various times and moments. Because as we all navigate, we all coming from different places and we all have different experiences and we all are dealing with similar conspiracies and they're acted out in different ways. But I think Israelite Nation, the history and culture, just having a place, a safe haven, even for us to grow together and to have a culture. I mean, even as someone who grew up in it and was born in this nation, has seen the culture and how it's affected me and helped me even navigate this world. It's just something you can't even explain. And so I'm always, humble to the culture and humble to our God as the one who's able to lead us, to find these answers.
Yeah. That's the one thing about the nation, right? Is that it's really all about support. I love it. Again, you're Minister Anthony, right? Minister Anthony. And, before coming into the nation, I'm sure you thought minister meant something different than what it is. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, honestly, I thought a minister was just some old white guy that had a white collar around his shirt. That's what that was my viewpoint of a minister, right? And if anybody would have told me, like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. And now, as a minister, it's understood you're a servant to the people.
Oh
right?
yes.
And that's it's as a priest, as the elder, it's not that you sit at a seat of authority, it's that you are a servant to the people. And so I'm going through this to show the culture. These are things not just that we speak about, but things that we teach our young sons, right? It's like when Jesus Christ was talking to disciples, it's like, listen, you guys are fighting over who sits on my left, who fits on my right, all these various things, and the kingdom comes. And what was his correcting point? Like, listen, that value system is what you got taught. That's what the Gentiles do. They fight over those hierarchical positions. If you want to be the best, if you really want to have the biggest value, whatever, then you need to be the servant to the people, right? That's who's most important in the kingdom, the one who actually serves. And so that's the message that we have to our young men, to try to really have them understand. You don't want to be pulled to try to become something that you're not, or something that someone else wants to build for you. You need to stay rooted in who you are and understand that serving my people is the greatest honor you could ever have for anyone on this earth.
Oh yeah, and I love the comment that Naomi Blair just posted. The perfect framework for relationships. Everything the world lacks, Israel makes up for.
Absolutely.
And I love that, because the world tried to take so much from Israel, right? We talk about our judges, we talk about our history, everything. The one thing they couldn't replicate was that spirit. And that spirit resides here in the Israelite nation. And so you get to see all of this come alive, everything in the book come alive. You get to see what that framework for a relationship is. You get to see what true bonding is, what true brotherhood is, what motherhood is, all these different things that the world has their own made up definition for. We get to experience that and see that in its entirety. We know what it means to help a brethren, right? We talk about the desolate conditions in which the schools and things are. We know that even within Israel's framework, there's provisions for what you do for the poor and for the widow.
Right. It's part of our culture. Absolutely. Right. Yes.
For everything we go through, there's provisions for, so that no one is left out in the cold, right? Like you said, you don't have to say, hey, this is the king of Israel, in order to understand how important your role is, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you serve, like you said, as we serve the people and as we go forth, we know how important that is. We know how important it is to go out there to really feed everybody with this culture, with this nation, so that they can be spiritually fed to return to their God, to really build up the nation.
Yeah.
And we talk about countering the conspiracy to destroy young Israelite boys. That right there will wipe out any conspiracy. You don't have to, like you said, you don't have to worry about is music destroying me, is entertainment destroying me. I know what my focus is.
Right.
My focus is on my God and my nation.
Right.
So whatever's coming to the left or right, it will never touch me anyway.
Right.
And
So now imagine an Israelite in Jackie Robinson's place, having that foundation. I'm going to support my family and my nation, and I'll integrate and go over there. But guess what? My coach is coming with me. My accountant's coming with me. It's not going to be just me. And then when I leave, everything folds. I'm bringing everybody with me. Otherwise, we have no deal. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I know it's more complicated than that, but I'm saying that as our young men, we're teaching our young men, as you craft your life and your life dream, we want you to dream big. We want you to accomplish all your goals. The nation needs to be a part of that, right? It needs to all be a part of that, as well as you write the calculus of your life and the things that you're doing. And that's a part of the thing. And that's the way that's going to help protect you against, you can't survive by yourself. And so all of us together, can succeed in supporting each other. That's one of the foundations there. All right, so that's one thing, right? Just that whole support. That's definitely a thing that's going to help. Some other things that we have spoken about is helping our young men identify their gifts. Helping our young men identify their gifts. If you leave it up to society, they're going to say, oh, yeah, you're good in sports. Oh, yeah, you're good in that. Like, that's it. But talk a little bit about that and why that's so important. Helping our young men to identify their gifts.
I think for me, like when I think about this in particular, I think about in the story in the scriptures of Jacob and Joseph, and how Jacob provided that blanket to his blanket that what's it called, the coat
of many colors.
Of many colors. And I think for me that's almost symbolic of what it means to like actually invest in your children. And I think investing especially in your son. And in your ability to recognize that again, as we were saying, many of these athletes and artists that sort of make all this money for these big companies, there is potential in all of these Black boys that are in our schools and our communities to be the engine of $1 billion industry, right? So that being the case, we should invest in them in that same fashion, to invest in them so that each and every one of them, again, is potentially can drive the engine to $1 billion companies, right? So I think for us looking at the blueprint of someone like Jacob to say, you know what, it's important to actually take that time to invest and to allow our children to realize you can do anything you want to and not to limit that potential, I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's found in Genesis 37. We talk about the story of Joseph receiving a coat of many colors, even so much so, like you said, even when he had that dream, right, and he was trying to explain to them the dream, they couldn't see the gift so much as they see their position in his gift. Like, what do you mean? You're supposed to reign over us?
You're right. Exactly.
What does this even mean?
Yeah, that was tough. So that's an example of not supporting your brother, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to flip it around a little bit.
So we can pull the scriptures to see the negative or the positive of it.
Yeah.
But the idea again is to understand how the today representation of all those concepts, Israelite Nationwide Ministries, is exactly what is the epitome of that.
Yeah, right. I think part of it is also a sense of identity. I think identity helps you it allows you to reach your potential and allows you to use your gifts. And I think the world there's so much lies in the world, and just personally going through life, and as you go through different situations and different trials and tribulations, I think as a young man, being able to use the Bible as a guide, and being able to use the stories and the people in there, not understanding that these aren't characters, these aren't fictional characters, but these are your ancestors, these are your fathers who've gone through trials and tribulations as well. And there's a lot to learn in it. And I think that identification, will contribute to a higher sense of purpose and self. Because, I mean, you can read the Bible a million times and get something different out of it every time, and understand a different way to apply it to your life. So I think, especially as a young person growing up, it's vital that you kind of get that information, because there's a lot in here as we've been discussing.
C. Field says, we must take this world's broken promises out of our ears and the love of money out of our eyes. These are the things trapping our young men and even our old ones.
Oh yeah, amen, amen, definitely.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
even-
point.
Yeah, that's actually sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just. I was
No, I was
just
gonna say. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, speaking to that relationship, it reminds me so much of even the relationship between Joshua and Moses.
Mhm.
And you talk about identifying your gift and just kind of Moses being that role model, right? Without even probably knowing that he was that role model for Joshua to kind of come behind him and kind of lead in the sense that, like, okay, I get a better understanding now. He's Moses is again all the trials and tribulations that he faced among his brethren, his people. And so even as we walk, right, as Israelite men, right, we know that everything we do, someone is watching, especially our young men.
Right. And so that goes to the whole thing of the whole role model, the whole mentorship thing, is that as a man that has to be in Israel, that you have to understand that you need to model and actively seek to be a model for the young ones coming out, right? This world is so complicated. It can be so complicated that, like Ezra said, yeah, it's in there, it's in the scriptures, but they may not always be able to connect 2022 to the scriptures, what they're going through in Vashon High School to the scriptures. They may not be able to always make that connection. And that's why it's important for us to help articulate that, help explain it, help to bring it together. These are not just old stories, right? As Ezra was saying, but this is directly related to what you're going through. There is no distance between what you're going through and the tenets of the scriptures, because this is exactly what's needed to solve the problem that you're having. You're just not sure exactly how you fit that in. It's not that easy, and that's why we're here. That's why that's why you need elders. That's why you need men. That's why you need fathers. That's why you need to try to help, and aunts as well, just to help teach the young men and show, hey, this is not some far distant story or fairy tale. This is the precepts that we learn through these scriptures is exactly what we need to solve your problem today.
I think.
Oh yeah, I
Also,
love that. No, go ahead, Chef. Go ahead.
I think also the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, with the examples that even with us having a panel now and things like a feast, because a feast was real important for me when I first went. And I was able to see, yeah, there was a talent. The talent was there. They talked about the talent, but it was about the other things in his life that he was doing. He was providing leadership. He was also, it was logic, just things that they brought about. It wasn't just his ability to, at the time it was music, right? It wasn't just his ability to do music. It was how he loves, how he communicates, how he was a leader in what he was doing. Those things, people need to experience that, the exposure. And I think that was the difference between me and some of my friends who may still be, I know a friend right now who's still there in that situation down at Vashon. He's never left. And the difference was I was exposed to other things, and having this platform, having this type of discussion in this panel to let them know that other situations exist, other lifestyles, other ways to come out besides just sports, other ways to come out besides just being an artist or in the arts. There's other ways to get out of that situation or that environment. But one thing I did want to say was, we do see the punishment that was placed on us, because with me and Ezra both coming from different situations, we still had the same mindset, right?
Yes,
It was still the same mindset. So spirit was, that punishment was over the top of us, right? And it wasn't just about being in this environment or that environment. It was really, we're dealing with what we were being punished with. And now that we can move forward, it's like exposure, exposure, exposure. Show the people, show the Israelite men or the Jacobite men what we can be and what we can do if we unified, if we looked at each other and said, this is my brother, versus looking at each other and frowning. You know, that's the difference, you know. So that's all I wanted to say. I just think we
No,
need exposure.
great point. S. Parker also says, yes, our young men need examples. If not in their family, needed in their community. So yeah, I can tell the story of David. I can tell the story of Moses and Aaron, but I also tell the story of Shelby and Ezra, right? I can tell the story of how what it is that you guys maneuvered to get to this point in place. I can tell the story of my story. We can tell our story, right? As Israelites men, how do we become successful and with our definition of success, you know? And we can tell those stories and let them understand it, that the thing that got me from point A to point B is this culture, right? I'm here to testify and to tell you those things and to help guide you through your things. Like you said, in society, they're only going to glorify the rapper and the sports person. But in a nation, we're glorify Israelite men who have done, tremendous things. And tremendous things could be supporting their family. It could be, taking this nation from one place to the other. It could be, just all these various aspects. We're the ones who define that because we're looking for things that are really going to edify us as a nation and glorify our God. And so those are the characteristics that we want to promote in our young people and teach them how to really pull those things out of them as well.
Yes, yes. Especially, I think, and this sort of goes to one of the things I think is on our list too as well, is again, like where we place our value, especially as men, goes beyond money, goes beyond our ability to seek fame, goes beyond our ability to be selfish in our success. But as you said, it's about uplifting those who are around us, whether it be the wife we are with, whether it be our God, our community. I think, again, we have different value system within this nation that allows us to be able to help young boys to be men.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I love that, and I'll just say really quickly, I'm gonna steal a line from Elder Jeffrey. One thing I see throughout the scriptures is the high expectation that's placed on each person.
Yes.
And again, stealing a line from Elder Jeffrey, and a huge thank you to our Elder Shadrach, right? Because we always leave situations and places in better conditions than when we found them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the high expectations, again, if we go to Numbers chapter 1, verse 45. Numbers chapter 1, verse 45. Talk about high expectations. So, and it goes through all the different tribes when you go further in the chapter. But in that particular verse, Numbers chapter 1, verse 45. So were all those that were numbered of the children of Israel by the house of their fathers, from 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war in Israel, right? So imagine our culture, right? When, and this kind of ties to the story of David, right? Where his brothers were able to go to couldn't go to war yet, right? He went out to go see them as they were in war. That's when the whole thing with Goliath had happened. But the idea of I can imagine, I can't wait to go to war, or not go to war, but to go out and defend my country, or defend my nation, right? I can't wait to reach that milestone. Like the expectation is put in you. You can imagine me and talking to my sons and saying, you can't wait. When you get older and you get to that point, I'm going to, give you my sword, or I'm going to train you to be prepared so when you're ready to go out and you can go and be a part of all the other Israelite young men that are here to defend our nation. And so nowadays it's different, but not really that much different. We're not necessarily going to war in the physical sense, but we're also going to want to groom our young men so that, hey, when it's time for you guys to get to that cycle where you're beyond school, you're choosing your careers, you're going to start, doing things in the community, you're going to start leading this nation, preparing them so that they can be ready to take on that role. It's the same dynamic. High expectation, because we expect you guys to take leadership roles in the nation as well as in our community.
Amen. Amen.
Fight for our God.
Amen. Absolutely. All for our God. All right. So we're coming to the end. I know we threw a lot in there. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully, when we talk about countering the conspiracy to destroy Israelite boys, that you guys can kind of see a little bit clearer what that conspiracy is, and also a little bit clearer about why Israelite Ministries and Israelite culture is, that's in the general sense, but a very specific sense is the answer to help counter that as well. And so I know we talked a lot about our condition, situation that we're in, and it seems very dismal. We see all the pictures and stuff, all the statistics or whatever. But I'm always want to leave on a positive note. And I know in Jeremiah 29, and I'm gonna just read verse 11 to 14. And this is even a part of when the God of Israel was, sending our forefathers into enslavement in Babylon. He was like, okay, so you're going to go through this for a little bit, but understand it's not forever. Same thing here. We've just come out of the 400, and this is a part of our redemption, a part of us being restored. And so the God of Israel is saying, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then shall you call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations, from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord, and I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. Again, I always like to understand and that hope that we have and the knowledge that we have, the condition that we were in over these past 400 years, even our present situation that we're in is not going to be forever. And we have hope and look towards and fight and plan towards the restoration of our family and the restoring of our nation. And that's what our investment is in. And especially it's our young people, our young men that are gonna bring that next age in. So that's why investment in our young men is so important, and to help fight against the conspiracy that wants to destroy them. So in that regard, I'd like to say thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Minister Anthony. Thank you, Ezra. Thank you, Dr. Blair, for joining us. I've already saw people say, hey, we'd like to see another discussion on this. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But I enjoyed it myself. Thank you guys so much. You guys hang on, okay? And we're going to talk backstage for a few minutes. To everyone else, peace.